will pay through Friday on Friday is a nightmare, because you're constantly making adjustments of people that don't show up on Friday or are sick or take off or whatever. And if you make a mistake, you don't have time to fix it. And if your payroll person's sick, you're screwed. So I prefer, and I recommend for my clients, for cash flow and for ease of operation, biweekly with a week's delay.
Welcome back, everyone. Yes, today is another episode of Hard Hat the CEO, and I'm Chris Gilman, and I've got a guest here today, Charles Reed. And Charles, we're going to be talking about, I can't say it's my most passionate discussion, but I can get passionate about when I got to pay them. So we're going to be talking about taxes and payroll and all that good stuff, and how you contractors can pass it on to somebody else, go on to something that's a lot more fun. But please welcome Charles. Charles, how you doing today?
Doing well, Chris. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Charles, can you give us a little background about yourself before we get into our discussion?
Sure. I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in Iowa, graduated from high school at 16, joined the United States Marine Corps at 17, spent 4 years in service, including a combat tour overseas. Came back, was stationed in Kansas City, met and married my wife, went to work for Colgate-Palmolive making soap. Decided I didn't want to do that, so I went to college. Got my degrees, my MBA, my CPA. Went to work for Texas Instruments, and worked in the corporate world for 15 years, and then started my own business.
That's the way to go.
And that was a third of a century ago.
Wow. Thank you for your service. And what do you think, what's the biggest, mistake when it comes to accounting and business in general, but contractors as well? But what do you think? Is it the knowledge or not planning?
It's the knowledge. You don't know what you don't know. And one of the things, any business needs 4 advisors. They need an insurance agent, they need a banker, they need an attorney, and they need an accountant. The accountant will help you understand what the numbers mean, where you're making profit, where you're losing money, what your percentages are, what the trends are. If your labor is going up, you need to know that as a percentage of your contract revenue. If your material is going up, what your material costs are. When we do a bill of materials for a new building, when I worked in the jail industry, that was critical, that you knew every piece that was going into it, every number, and what those costs were. And if they changed, if your suppliers were changing costs and so on, you had to know that critically, because that involved how you were bidding the job and how much money you were going to make. You had to know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know where you're at. You're just living out of your wallet, and when it's empty, you're broke. That's not a way to run a business.
You do not only payroll, but you also do business taxes too, right?
I've been doing business taxes and consulting for small businesses since I hung out my shingle in 91.
How do you, I always laugh when my accountant and I get together and you have to pay taxes. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm not making money if I'm not paying taxes unless I'm making money. So making money is a good thing, but making money and cash are two different things, right? Because
absolutely. Cash is king. You can have cash and not be making money. You can be making money and not have cash, which is worse, because if you don't have cash, you can't buy product and pay people. So it's very convoluted. That's where an accountant is critical to your business, because he can explain to you and show you and teach you so you understand what's going on, and then can make adjustments in your business. Now, don't let the accountant run your business. I mean, and some will want to tell you how to do things. They're an advisor, they're a consultant, they're providing you information about your business. It's not their business, it's your business. But it's critical to understand that. And if you don't have the training or the background or the education and the numbers, then get somebody who you can work with and tell a joke to and laugh and understand, that will work with you and teach you these things and show you and keep you up to speed on them. It's critical.
I have a good understanding of income statements and balance sheets and all that good stuff. And this is not necessarily a tax episode or anything like that, or accounting episode, but I have a difficulty understanding the cash flow report. Can you put it in a nutshell summary of how that's different than, say, the income statement?
Sure. For instance, on an income statement, you have an expense called depreciation. That's the expense of your equipment or capital goods over time. That's not a cash expense. Okay. So if you've got $100 of revenue and $100 of depreciation, you show zero income, but you got $100 in cash because the depreciation is not a cash expense.
It offset it in a way. Is that right?
So when you do a cash flow statement, you convert those things that aren't cash into, you deal with the cash, not the income and the expenses. You deal with the cash aspects of it, which are different than income and expenses, because you have non-cash income and non-cash expenses, which affect your bottom line and your balance sheet and your income statement, but don't affect your cash. And that's why you have a cash flow statement.
And not that one's more important than the other. They're all important. They just tell you different things. Is that right?
Absolutely. They're all critically important to make sure your business is running as effectively as possible. Okay. But you can't just look at one. You've got to look at all of them and understand them. That's where an accountant is critical. If you're trained for it, great. Do your own, enjoy. No problem. I do mine. Okay. I don't hire an outside accountant to do my income statement balance sheet. I teach it. I've taught cost accounting. I've taught accounting. I've taught tax. I understand this. But when I built my last custom house, Ruth and I had a lot of input into the design, but we didn't place the joists, we didn't place the studs, we didn't place the piers for the foundation. We had experts do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And in the design of that and in the understanding of that, I can put up a stud with as well as the next guy, but okay, we went with 16-inch center. We could have gone with 24 2x6s, but that's what I have engineers for. I'm not an engineer. I had an engineer once say to me, I can do exactly what you do as an accountant. I said, absolutely, Joe, you can do exactly what I do. And I can do exactly what you do. I can go back to school, get about 3 years of college in engineering courses, spend 20 years in the field, and I can do what you can do. Absolutely. And he looked at that, he said, fair enough.
We deal with, we're talking about general accounting reports for the business itself, but we also deal with, depending on type of business you're in, but we also deal with payroll taxes, not our own accounting, but the accounting for our employees in a way, right? Because we're responsible for taking the money out and keeping it and sending it to where it needs to go. And that's all. I don't say it's hard because you do it every day. It's something I don't know. Is it because they changed the rules so much, or what's the biggest challenge there?
Well, there's a couple of things that go on. First of all, 75% of all U.S. federal government revenue comes through payroll. Mm-hmm. Okay. So anytime they want to change the revenue stream, they change payroll. So the rules change constantly. Just recently, in the last few months of the Biden administration, a new rule for independent contractors came into effect, which was to replace the Trumpian rule that they had overruled when they came in, which replaced the Obama rule that Trump had put in. And I'm sure the new Secretary of Labor will have a different independent contractor regulation here shortly. So the rules change. And remember, as a contractor, when you take money from your employee and withhold it and deposit it, that's not your money. That's theirs. And one of the things that people don't understand, if you don't pay that in, you're personally liable for it, and it's not dischargeable in bankruptcy. If you don't pay in the withholdings from your employees, it's not only a felony, but they'll come after you for the money, and they'll take your house, your car, your business, and no matter what. No matter what, it doesn't matter.
You're still on the hook, yeah.
You're still on the hook. There's no way to get away from that other than the 10-year statute of collections, and that's after they've assessed it. So that's going to be 12 to 14 years after the fact, and they'll come after you every day until then. So
even if you die, they're probably going to take it from your estate if you have.
They will. Absolutely, they'll take it from your estate. So there's the IRS It has a long reach and will come after your ass. So the best thing to do is stay out of their bad graces.
Heard that. We talk a lot about budgeting here, and we talk about hiring people to take responsibility and turn over those reins, because I want my business owners to become CEOs of their company. And it's just not, when you calculate the cost of a person, let's just call them a person, employee, it's more than just the cost of their salary, right? That you have to budget for.
So, well, absolutely. You've got not only their salary or their hourly wage, you've got your taxes on top of that you have to pay as an employer, plus all the benefits, whether you provide them or not, they're there. Time off, training, meals, allowances, mileage, any number of things depending on exactly how you treat them and what your package is. Health care, and then mandated things. In some states, you have mandated costs for health care, you have disability, you have unemployment taxes you have to pay. If you have a high turnover, your unemployment taxes may be substantial, maybe as much as 6% of your labor cost on top of the salaries. If you have a high turnover, if you have a low turnover, it'll be lower. So if you understand that, your accountant can explain to you the cost of firing people. You come to the understanding that the hiring decision is more than just, I need a body to fill that spot. Is this somebody that's going to stick around? Are they going to be problems? Are they going to have workers' comp cases? Are they going to be on? Am I going to have to fire them? There's a whole panoply of things that go into the hiring decision and the cost of an employee or a contractor over time.
Now, I've heard numbers in the past, and I know they might be more now, but as high as 35% more than just or can they be higher? I'm sure they can be higher.
They can actually be higher, but if you'll go with 35%, you'll be in the ballpark.
Gotcha. So my friends and folks, if you're paying, say, $20 an hour, $50 an hour, you're going to add another 30%, 35% on top of that as your cost of having an employee. And I'm not down in it, because you got to have them to, grow and so forth, but it's just part of the business. And the reason I'm bringing it up, so it's part of your budget, that that's going to come out at some point in your bottom line.
Absolutely. And some of it may not be this year, but it will be there. And you will have to absorb those costs. Okay. And some of it will be cash now and some will be cash later. So, for instance, if you're going to give them vacation, which is standard, or paid time off, which is standard, they may not take it this year, but next year they'll take it. And you're going to have to pay them for that time off, and they're not going to be producing any revenue. PTO standard. It varies from location to location and industry to industry, exactly what the benefits are. But, in this day and age, if you don't offer some benefits, you're not going to get too many takers.
I had a human resource lady on one time, and I know it now, but back then I didn't. There's a difference, and really depends on the state as well, on whether your salary or your hourly. Is that right? That's still the case?
It's basically federal law supplemented by state law. And state law, if the state law is more employee favorable, then the state law will override the federal law. Okay. So the federal may say they can be a contractor. The state law says they can't be, then they can't be. Okay. So anything that's favorable to the employee in the state overrules the federal law effectively. But it's the whole contractor employee is a whole body of law. You don't get to make that choice. It's a whole body of law that determines that. It started off with 20 aspects of English common law, and it was preponderance of evidence, and then that's modified by federal and state laws and regulations issued by the Labor Department and the various labor departments of the states that all affect whether or not you're an independent contractor or an employee. And if you make the wrong choice, that can be very expensive. Okay. And then salary versus hourly, again, it's a body of law and it changes. It's changed just recently again, the levels of what you have to be then a salary or have to be an hourly. So you have to understand those. You need to deal with somebody who can, either an HR expert or your accountant, if they're your payroll company, can advise you on those things for your location in your state, so you stay out of trouble. Because I have seen companies get fined well into 5 figures for misclassification of employees.
You can have, my recommendation is to find a payroll company. That's my personal opinion, whether it be your accountant who offers it, or like yourself, you have a company that does payroll. But I think it's safer and you don't have to keep up all the rules. But does a company like yourself or other companies, do they have insurance in case you make a mistake to kind of protect your clients and yourself for that matter if something's wrong?
Actually, I carry E&O insurance as a CPA, errors and omission insurance. I've never had to file a claim under it.
Sure.
Are we perfect? No. Have we made mistakes? Yes. Have we paid the penalties and interest on it? Yeah, we have. Not very much, but enough that it's an annoyance, and it's enough that my people and I work very hard at making sure that doesn't happen. But we're human.
Yeah.
We've gotten much better. The systems are much better. The software is much better. We don't have near the problems we used to have. And beyond that, since we are in the industry and are in the field, we understand how it works. And for all your listeners, the IRS cannot penalize you for a simple mistake. They can only penalize you for gross negligence.
Okay.
So if you make a mistake and it causes you to not pay taxes on time, you'll have to pay the taxes, but we're talking the penalties and interest on that. If it's a simple mistake, there is no penalty. The problem is, of course, who determines whether it's a simple mistake or gross negligence?
That's
Well,
true.
in the end, it's the judge. But when you're dealing with the IRS, it's a whole series of no's followed by a single yes. So if you have a substantial penalty, and it was a mistake, okay? It was just
Sure.
a simple mistake. Appeal, 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 appeal. There's multiple levels up to and including tax court, which is why I became a U.S. tax court practitioner, which allows me to represent my clients in U.S. tax court, even though I'm not an attorney. There's about 270 of us in the country that can do
Wow.
that. So I did that because the IRS a number of years ago was getting very obstreperous, and it was a way for me to help defend my clients from an overreaching Internal Revenue Service. So appeal, 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 because sooner or later you'll probably find somebody that says, okay, that makes sense. We'll go ahead and abate it.
Well,
Now, if it's $10, just pay it.
be done with it. You're going to spend more time than appealing it. And
Exactly.
and still you might lose and still have to pay it anyway. So the companies like yourself, you keep up on those changes. And there's one less thing that we have to do as contractors or construction business owners to worry about. And you do it every day, and we don't have to do it. It's kind of like I can do all kinds of things building a house, but it's going to take me longer than it is if I just hire my framers to come in to frame his house and my plumber come do the plumbing and so forth.
Absolutely.
And a long time ago, one of my guys was pouring concrete and he did the math for me. He said, here, I was doing my own concrete basically. And he gave me here's what I charge you. And I looked at it and I said, here, you do this. That is not me. And yeah, I can save a little bit of money, but over time, it's not really worth it. And I assume the same with you guys. Probably the expense is not worth the hassle if you did it yourself, or even if you have a bookkeeper that's still a lot of work. They got things to do besides just payroll, and that might be a good way to get that out. And that bookkeeper is always probably the more ones you talk to, right? As far as handling payroll.
You need to outsource payroll. You absolutely need to outsource payroll for several reasons. First of all, the cost of outsourcing it is a nit in comparison to the time you will spend doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say something here that will upset some people. The instances of internal fraud in payroll is incredible. More people go to jail. More bookkeepers go to jail over payroll fraud because it's easy. It is so easy. There was a lady in Illinois who worked for the county, and she embezzled $50 million over the course of 15 years in payroll funds. I have seen this in my entire career. I remember very well my father, who's an insurance consultant, ran across a situation with one of his clients, must be 60, 65 years ago. It was the accountant for a firm there in Moline, Illinois. And he was on the company payroll. And then there was an executive payroll that he kept in his desk for the executive that wasn't involved. And he was on that payroll too.
Oh, that's nice.
Because he controlled the books, so he was just double paying himself. Got caught by trying to defraud the company in a different way, but when they looked into it, they found that. So for your security, outsource it. I mean, you get the reports, you get to look at it. You don't have somebody else giving you something internally. It's just safer. And it reduces fraud. It reduces all kinds of things. It increases privacy. It increases confidentiality. And it puts it with somebody who is absolutely on top of things and has to stay on top of things. That's our job. That's what we do all the time. That's what we sell. We're compliance experts.
Sure.
We understand compliance better than most of our competitors do, because that's what we do. I do as a CPA and as a U.S. tax court practitioner, is the compliance aspects. Every payroll company does a reasonably good job of producing checks, or they'd be out of business. But we like to think that our unique selling proposition is our expertise in compliance.
Do you guys? I guess what's your? I'm gonna say preference. I've dealt with accounting departments before, and everybody has their own opinion. But weekly pay, bi-weekly, or monthly?
Well, monthly is a little tough in a labor industry. I prefer and I recommend bi-weekly. It's a good mix. Our standard is pay through Friday, pay the following Friday, which helps your cash flow, as bi-weekly payroll does rather than weekly, helps the company's cash flow. By delaying from the end of the pay period, which is Friday, to pay the checks on the following Friday, gives you time to make sure you can get the payroll done. If there's holidays, sick days, snowstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever, you've got time. Somebody's sick, somebody's out. You have time to do it. Trying to do payroll through the day, we'll pay through Friday on Friday is a nightmare, because you're constantly making adjustments of people that don't show up on Friday or are sick or take off or whatever. And if you make a mistake, you don't have time to fix it. And if your payroll person's sick, you're screwed. So I prefer, and I recommend for my clients, for cash flow and for ease of operation, bi-weekly with a week's delay.
Got you. And I agree. Let me throw one more. Is that for salary and hourly as well? Or do you have a?
Yeah, I don't recommend from a cost point of doing separate payrolls for management. Put them on monthly and put the regular people on bi-weekly. You're just doing more payrolls. You're just making work for yourself. Just take that salary and divide it by 26 and pay them every 2 weeks.
20 years ago, I was on salary. Well, I've pretty much been always on salary, I guess. But 20 years ago, my boss or my boss's boss figured out that when I was on salary and you got paid 2 extra weeks or a year or whatever it was. So he wanted us to go to monthly to save some money. And it's like, okay, whatever. But I just, I think it probably, in my opinion, it caused less morale. It gave us more reason to be upset than the money he was spending or saving. It's like you probably got less productive just because you upset somebody on how they, because that's a tough change going from bi-weekly to monthly. In my opinion, it's a struggle.
Here's the problem was he was dividing the salary by 24 and giving you half a month bi-weekly instead of by 26, because he in fact was screwing himself by the way he was calculating. There's no difference between paying that $10,000 in 12 increments or in 24 increments or 26 or 52 or 365 increments. It's the same amount in the end. But why add to the paperwork and the complexity for no purpose?
And like 5 or 6 years before, now all of a sudden, now you realize you're saving whatever it was. But
the company, and we have companies that do that.
Yeah.
And so I charge them for another monthly payroll for management that would otherwise be free, but I charge them for it because I have to do the work. So, okay, if that's how you want it, I advise against it. But it's your company, and we'll do it your way, and we'll charge you for it. Thank you.
We appreciate it. That's great. So, if somebody wanted to reach out and find you, Charles, or find your company to do their payroll, how would they do that?
We're on the web at getpayroll.com. My personal email is cjr@getpayroll. My phone number is 972-353-0000. And for those who are interested in more knowledge about payroll, my most recent book, The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups. For your listeners, if they will go to thepayrollbook.com and enter the discount code podcast, we will ship them a free copy of it. No shipping, no handling, 100% free, as long as supplies last.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for that. So it's thepayrollbook.com?
Thepayrollbook.com, all one word, .com, and discount code podcast, and we'll ship them free of charge. Here's my most recent list of addresses to ship. So,
well, thank you, Charles. And that information will be in the show notes below if you want to get your book and anything else like that. Also, if you enjoyed our conversation and want to talk to me about other things about becoming a CEO for your business, linked in the bottom below. Thank you, Charles, for your day and your time. This has been great. And it's about that April 15th time in it. So it's coming up.
It's coming.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.